Roger said, we're actually outside the courtroom here. The man has been sentenced and he's been given 5 years. We've got with us Vernon Young, one of the probation welfare officers responsible for placing the child with the father. How on earth could this come about, Vernon? How come you placed the child at risk like this?
Well, I must correct you. We did not place the child with the father. What happened was that we were asked to do a welfare report on the family, and as a result of the report and what we advised the judge ordered that the child be placed with the father.
But in that case, you must have given pretty strong evidence, because the judges do take notice of you, don't they? That the child should be put back with the father.
The child wasn't with the father at the time. The child was in a children's home before, and the decision had to be as to whether the child was returned back to the children's home.
Do you think that was a mistake?
In hindsight, a child has died. So someone is going to say that was a mistake.
Did you mention in your report to the judge that the father had previously committed an assault on this child?
The father had not previously committed an assault on the child at that time.
Oh, at the time you did the report?
That's right. He had no previous convictions.
But surely it was up to you. You must have known this was a very dodgy placement.
No, there was no indication that it was going to be a dodgy placement.
If this can happen so easily, as it appears, what assurance have the public got that there aren't other children out there now at risk who you've recommended should be with their parents?
In the end, the court has to decide where a child is going to live. It decides that on the evidence that is put before it, mainly by us as welfare officers, and we will make recommendations. The court looks at that, the barristers will question it and test it as far as they possibly can. In the end...
How do you come to these sort of judgments with these reports? Who do you talk to?
Well, we talk to the parents, we talk to the children's home, the social workers, anybody in the medical profession, the schools, and on the basis of all that, we write a report and often make suggestions to the court as to where the child should live.
Do you talk to independent outsiders like the neighbours?
Occasionally, but not very often.
Not in this case, I believe.
Not in this case, no.
No, because you've had several neighbours saying that they could have told you this was a bad idea.
So I understand, but no one gave us that information at the time.
Does that mean in the future you will be talking to neighbours in cases like this?
It's a dangerous practice, in my view. Neighbours will say all sorts of things.
Not as dangerous as putting children back with violent fathers.
The very occasional risk that something is going to happen, but this father was not seen as violent. That's the point.
I must come back to you. You say it's an occasional risk. How many other children do you think might be at risk?
Impossible to say. As far
Straight in, girl. Straight for the throat. Yes. That's it.
Mr. Young, we'd like to ask you about this major blunder. You've obviously returned this child home to a father who has now killed it. Surely this is something that you should resign over.
We did not return the child to the home at all. What happened was that we wrote a welfare report on all the circumstances being investigated, and the judge in this particular matter decided that the child should go home with his father.
But you recommended it. Do you now agree that that is a major blunder?
No, I don't agree it's a major blunder. It was recommended over 3 years ago that this child should go back to his father, and the child has been living with the father for all that time.
Yes, you've said in your previous evidence, Mr. Young, that you didn't investigate the neighbours in terms of their opinion of the father. Is that true?
That's quite true, yes. That's not something we normally do.
Why is that? Why do you ignore the advice of judicial inquiries? I'm thinking of Louis Blom-Cooper's inquiry in relation to the Jasmine Beckford case. I'm thinking of the Maria Corbell case, all of which have changed the rules and procedures in relation to child abuse, and which say that you should actually listen to neighbours. Indeed, in those cases, the neighbours themselves gave evidence to the social workers, which the social workers ignored. And now you're following a similar line. Why have you ignored the neighbours and judicial inquiries?
If there's any evidence from neighbours that something is going on which is a cause of concern, we would obviously go and talk to them. But you must remember that in the majority of cases, we're dealing with a family breakdown, pure and simple, and we would not dream of going and talking about those problems to the neighbours.
You will never know unless you ask. Surely.
No, but we would not normally go to neighbours. We always go to other independent people, such as the school.
Why are social services and probation officers obsessed with getting these kids back with families when we all know the majority of violent crime and murders actually happen in family groups? It's the most dangerous place for these kids to be.
I don't think we're obsessed with it at all. In this particular instance, the
Well, putting him back
social
with a dangerous,
services-
violent man is obsession, surely.
In this, yes, but he wasn't a dangerous, violent man.
Who
with
wrote the
respect.
report?
One of my officers wrote the report.
Is that officer being suspended?
Certainly not.
Why not?
Because at the time there was nothing to show any reason why this child should not go back to the father.
Is that officer still carrying out reports in similar cases?
Yes, indeed he is.
Is that a good idea?
Certainly it's a good idea.
Well, having made this sort of blunder?
This child was with the father for 3 years before anything happened. There was absolutely no evidence.
Yeah, but he was also assaulted during that 3 years, wasn't he?
There was an assault which was reported to a hospital, yes.
Right. And he was still left with the father?
He was, because no one else knew about that assault apart from the hospital.
And the neighbours?
I understand the neighbours knew,
But then you don't talk to the neighbours?
but we are no longer involved. Once the court has made the decision, we have no further part in that, unless something should come to the court's view.
You can't continuously, like Pilate, Mr. Young, wash your hands of the case and keep blaming the court. Surely you're a probation officer. You go out and see what's happening. You are meant to be the judge's ears and eyes.
Yes, but once the judge has made the order, we do not follow it up unless a further application is made to the court.
How many more children do you think are in this sort of situation at home with dangerous fathers because of your recommendations?
I don't know of any that are in danger from their
But you didn't know
fathers.
of this one?
If we knew, obviously the child would not have been returned to the father.
Well done, Vern.
Well done, Vernon.